Good day, everyone. Our topic for today is all about different kinds of research instruments. But before that, don't forget to like and subscribe to this channel and hit the bell button for more updates. Also, you will find different subjects in this YouTube channel. Just select the playlist section. And now, let's proceed to our main topic for today, which is all about different kinds of research instruments. Ano ba ang ibig sabihin ng instruments? Instruments are the data gathering devices that will be used in the study. It is a testing device for measuring a given phenomenon, such as a paper-pencil test, a questionnaire, an interviews, a research tools, or set of guidelines for observations. There are three characteristics of an instrument that we need to consider: the usability, the validity, and the reliability. But there is a separate discussion about these three. Okay? Because in this particular lesson, ang i-discuss ko lang is yung iba't ibang uri ng instruments na maaari nating magamit sa ating research. Ano ba yung mga yon? Una, ay questionnaire, interview, paper-pencil test, ito yung mga exam, research tools, or other guidelines for observation. Quantitative data collection methods. So, meron tayong iba't ibang ways to collect methods in quantitative. Meron tayong dalawang sources of data. Ano yung dalawang iyon? Una, primary sources and secondary sources. So, data can be collected from these sources. Ano ba yung primary sources at secondary sources? So, later, I will discuss this too. So data collected from the primary sources are known as the primary data. So data collected from the secondary sources are called secondary data. So yung primary sources, ito yung direktang nakuha mo dun sa pinagkuhanan mo ng data or information. Like halimbawa, nag-interview ako ng tao, sumagot siya sa akin. Ang tawag doon is primary sources. Ang secondary sources, ito yung mga articles na nakita ko lang sa internet, sa newspaper. So, secondary sources ang tawag doon. Ang tawag sa dalawang yun ay mga data. The primary data are also known as the raw data, which can be collected from the original sources or source in a controlled or an uncontrolled environment. While secondary data are data obtained from secondary sources such as reports, books, journals, documents, magazine, the web, and more. So, gaya na sabi ko, primary data are the data that has been collected by the respondents or through the respondents, while the secondary data are the data collected through internet sources, through journals, through books, etc. Data collection method. Isa sa mga data collection method ay interview. Okay, interview. Sa interview, kailangan mo ng instrument na gagamitin. The use of interview as data collection methods begins with the assumption that the participants' perspectives are meaningful, knowable, and can be made explicit, and that their perspective affect the process of the subject or the project. We have the following types of interviews that could be used in data collection. Meron tayong structured interview, which is a quantitative research. Like survey research, interviews are more structured than in qualitative. Pag sabing structured interview, ibig sabihin, hindi mo siya pwedeng dagdagan, hindi ka pwedeng mag-add ng ad-libs or mag-add ng mga questions kasi structured na siya. Structured interview are also known as standardized interview or a research-administered survey that must be performed by skilled researchers. So, ito na yung mga questions, ito na yung mga statements na kailangan mong masagot. So, hindi mo na kailangan mag-add. Kasi sa mga statements na to, enough na sila para masagot mo yung research questions mo. Face-to-face interview is another. So, meron tayong structured interview and then face-to-face interview. This is interviewing face-to-face remains the most frequently used quantitative research method. Ito yung harapan kayo ng ini-interview mo at meron ka mga tanong na tinatanong sa kanya. Disadvantage include impractical when large samples are involved, time-consuming, and expensive. Kasi, of course, you need to give something naman to the interviewee when you interview them. Kasi, to appreciate their effort, kasi hindi naman nila study mo yan eh. Time consuming siya, At the same time, lalo na kung large sample kasi you need to go kung saan sila available. Lalo na kung marami ang mga yan. Okay? Next, telephone interviews. So, telephone interviews are less time-consuming and less expensive kasi sa cellphone lang tatawag eh. The researcher has ready access to anyone who has a telephone, but the disadvantage is hindi mo makikita yung expression niya. At hindi mo makikita kung tama. Kasi sa expression, pwede mo mabasa kung tama or totoo yung sinasabi niya o hindi. Computer-assisted personal interview or yung tinatawag nating CAPI is a form of personal interview, but instead of completing a questionnaire, the interviewer brings along a laptop or handheld computer to enter the information directly into the database. Yung CAPI usually ginagamit siya ng mga police, no, kapag nag-i-interview sila ng mga suspect, okay, ng mga makukulong. So, di ba meron silang mga makinilya na ginagamit kapag sila ay nagta-type, or now computer ang ginagamit nila kapag nagta-type sila ng mga documents about dun sa case. So again, for the interview, meron tayong iba't ibang uri ng interview. These are structured interview, face-to-face interview, telephone interview, and CAPI, computer-assisted personal interviewing. Next, data collection method is questionnaire. So the first is interview. The second is questionnaire. The main purpose of questionnaire is to help extract data from respondents. It serves as a standard guide for the interviewers who need to ask the questions in exactly the same way. They are the medium in which responses are recorded to facilitate data analysis. There are normally 5 sections in a questionnaire, namely the respondent's identification data. Ito yung mga data niya like sex, name usually optional, hindi binibigay talaga yung name. Depende kung kailangan mo talaga. Sex, age, yan, ano pa ba, socioeconomic status, etc. And then an introduction. Kailangan there should be an introduction in the questionnaire, and then instruction, kung ano ang gagawin. So, sa introduction, papaliwanag mo doon kung bakit at tungkol saan yung study mo. And then instruction kung ano yung gagawin dun sa mga questionnaire. Classification of data and information. So, ito yung normally 5 sections ng isang questionnaire. So, number 1, the respondent's identification data. It may include the respondent's name, address, date of the interview, and name of the interviewer. The questionnaire will also be numbered for purposes of entering the data into the computer. Kailangan may mga number yan, like case number 1, case number 2, and case number 3, and so on. Number 2, an introduction is the interviewer's request for help. It is normally scripted and lays out the credential of the market, research company, and the purpose of the study and any aspect of confidentiality. So, pag introduction, ini-introduce mo yung study mo sa kanya. Pinapaliwanag mo sa kanya kung bakit mo ginagawa yung study na yon. Instruction refers to the interviewer. So, in the respondents, direction on how to move through the questionnaire, such as which questions to skip and where to move to if certain answers are given. Diba may mga instruction like example, if you say no, please proceed to number 5. If you say yes, please proceed to number 6. Parang ganun siya. That's instruction. Then information is the main body of the document and it's made up of the many questions and response codes. Classification data establish the important characteristics of the respondents, particularly related to their demographics, which are sometimes the front of the questionnaire or sometimes at the end. So these are the five sections of a questionnaire: respondents' identification data, introduction, instruction, information, and classification data. There are types of questionnaires. So, meron tayong iba't ibang types ng questionnaires na pwede magamit in data collection method. The first one is the paper and pencil questionnaire, na usually ginagamit talaga siya. Can be sent to a large number of people and saves the researcher time and money. Pero actually, ang paper-pencil magastos din siya, no? Kasi you need to provide a Xerox copy of all the questions or questionnaires na kailangan mo. People are more truthful while responding to the questionnaire regarding controversial issues, in particular due to the fact that their responses are anonymous. So, laging anonymous yung kanyang responses. Ibig sabihin, hindi nakalagay yung kanyang pangalan, lalo na kung controversial yung issue. Okay. So, ang questionnaire, gumagamit ng larger population din yan. Okay? And then another type of questionnaire is the web-based questionnaire naman. It's a new and inevitably growing methodology using the internet-based research. Ito yung mga Google form na kung saan mag-a-answer na lang yung mga respondents using Google Form. This would mean receiving an email on which you would click on an address that will take you to secure a website to fill a questionnaire. So may mga questions doon na sasagutin mo lang, but you need an internet connection. Kaya nga tinawag siyang web-based questionnaire. Kasi dapat may internet connection ka to answer all the questions needed for the questionnaire. Like in paper-pencil, yung ibibigay siya sa'yo personally and then magsasagot ka. Or pwedeng ipapadala siya sa iyo. Self-Administered Questionnaire. Questionnaires are generally distributed through mail, filled out and administered by the respondents themselves, which is returned via email to the researchers. Self-administered questionnaire can be used for pre-testing of program materials. Ito namang self-administer, ito yung ipapadala mo yung questionnaire mismo sa email ng tao, sa address niya. And then, yung tao na binadalhan mo, sasagutin niya and then ibabalik niya sa iyo yung questionnaire. Ang tawag sa prosesong yun is self-administered questionnaire. Questionnaires often make use of checklists and rating scale. Ito naman yung parang sabihin na nating uri ng questionnaire. These are the checklist and the rating scale. So magkaiba yung dalawa. These devices help simply and quantify people's behavior and attitude. A checklist is a list of behavior characteristics or other entities that the researcher is looking for. So i-check mo lang kung alin doon yung mga behavior niya, yung attitude niya. That's checklist. But rating scale is more useful when a behavior needs to be evaluated in a continuum. Ibig sabihin, i-rate mo yung mga behavior na yon. Okay? Halimbawa, meron siyang behavior, may characteristics sa mga tao na to. So, i-check mo lang siya. And then, dun sa behavior na yon, pwedeng meron kang separate na rating scale na kung saan sa rating scale, i-grade mo siya ng 4, 3, 2, 1 or 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Yung always, sometimes, never. So, yun yung mga rating scale or tawag doon is Likert scale. Okay? So, when a behavior needs to be evaluated in a continuum, rating scales state the criteria and provide 3 or more responses to describe the quality or frequency of a behavior, skill, strategy, or variables of this study. And the last one is observation. So, meron na tayong 4 na binigay ko, no? Ay, 3 muna pala, sorry. We have the interview, the questionnaire, and now we have the observation. This is the third data collection method. Observation is a way of gathering data by watching behavior, events, or nothing physically characteristics in their natural setting. Like yung mag-observe ka ng klase, that's observation. If respondents are unwilling or unable to provide data through questionnaires or interviews, observation is a method that requires little from the individuals for whom you need the data. So, kailangan mo siyang i-observe kapag hindi pwede sa interview at saka questionnaire. Observation can be a non-vert when everyone knows that they are being observed, and covert when no one knows that they are being observed, and the observer is concealed. So, pwedeng overt, pwede siyang covert observation. And usually, overt yung mga observation namin, except na lang kung meron kang nakatagong mga camera, that's covert observation. Observation can also be direct or indirect observation. Direct observation is when you watch interaction, processes, or behavior as they occur. For example, observing a teacher teaching a lessons from a written curriculum to determine whether they are delivering it with fidelity. Or maaaring yung direct observation is directly siya nakita mo. Okay, like may banggaan na nangyari, so direct siya. Okay? So, parang yun, katulad din siya ng teacher, no, na nagtuturo, and then ino-observe mo siya, nakikita mo siya directly. Then, indirect observation naman, ito yung when you watch the result naman of interaction, process, or behaviors. For example, measuring the amount of food left by students in a school cafeteria to determine whether a new food is acceptable to them or not. O yan, example siya ng indirect. Ibig sabihin, after siya ng pangyayari, i-observe mo siya. Indirect observation yon. Halimbawa, yun nga, yun sa canteen. So, after kumain ng mga bata sa canteen, pupunta ka sa canteen para tignan kung okay ba yung sinerve na pagkain, naubos ba ng mga bata yung mga pagkain o hindi. So, that is indirect observation. Ang direct, ito yung nakikita mo siya directly. habang gumagalaw yung mga objects. Pero sa indirect, ito yung tapos na yung aftermath, tapos na yung pangyayari, so i-obserban mo siya. Another is, halimbawa, after the bagyong Ondoy, so pumunta ka doon sa Samar, tinignan mo yung result. So that is indirect observation. So test, this is the final test. So we have questionnaire, interview and observation, and the last is the test. Tests provide a way to assess subject knowledge and capacity to apply this knowledge to new situation. Tests take many forms. So usually ang test binibigay siya sa experimental research. Questions may address a single outcome of interest or lead to questions involving a number of outcome areas depending on the research study. The most powerful test that traditionally been norm reference assessment. What is norm reference test? It's provide information on how the target perform against the reference group or normative population, while other assessment like criterion reference assessment are constructed to determine whether or not the respondent subjects have attained mastery skill or the knowledge. So, dun sa norm reference test, sabi dito, how the target perform against the reference group. Ibig sabihin, you will compare this group kung magaling sila mag-perform, example sa exam, kaysa sa other group. So, you are comparing them. That's norm reference. Pag criterion reference, halimbawa, ang target mo, lahat sila makakuha ng 70% above. So, lahat ng mga bata, binigyan mo ng test at tignan mo kung lahat ba sila ay nakakuha ng 70% above sa score nila sa test. So, that is criterion reference assessment. And finally, the secondary data. So, lahat ng yon ay mga primary data. So, secondary data naman is a type of quantitative data that have already been collected by someone else for a purpose of different from yours. These data are collected by researchers, government and private agencies, institutions or organizations or companies that provide important information for government planning and policy recommendation and theory generation. Halimbawa, yung secondary is yung sa sa PSA, yan. Yung mga yan, meron tayong mga secondary data dyan ng mga data ng mga tao. Okay? Ilan yung population, ilan yung may asawa na, ilan yung mga bata na 10 below, mga ganyan. So, those are secondary data. May mga data na available na nakukunin mo na lang. Okay, this can be classified as paper-based sources and electronic sources. So, anong pinagkaiba ng dalawa? Pag sabing paper-based sources, are those from books, journals, periodicals, abstract, indices, directories, research reports, conference papers, market reports, annual reports, internal records of organization, newspaper, and magazines. While electronic sources come from CD-ROMs, online database, internet, videos, and broadcasts. Example of this data are from the Philippine Statistics Office, or PSO, Philippine Statistics on Education, Department of Health, Department of Budget and Management, Commission on Audit, and other government agencies and institutions. To make it short, paper-based sources are printed sources, while electronic are electronic sources wherein online sources sila na kung saan makikita mo sila using internet connections or using internet or network. Okay, so that's the difference between two paper-based sources and electronic sources. Now, there is an example here of the discussion of instrument. So, the primary instrument that will be used for the gathering of data will be the pre-test and post-test paper. This is a test that is provided by the researcher. The test paper is a 50-item multiple-choice type of test. Also, the researcher will provide different lessons using multimedia and different materials such as worksheets with team pair solo approach for the experimental group. And for the control group, the researcher will use a conventional method. Also, the researcher will use a self-made questionnaire to determine respondents' perceptions as regards to the usefulness of the team per solo approach and as to its relationship to the grade 11 respondents' mathematical performance. Validity and reliability of the questionnaire and examination will be maintained in cooperation with the experts in the same field of teaching. Okay, so that's all about for the different kinds of research instruments. Again, And data collection, I may add. Okay, data collection method. So we have two sources of data. We have the primary data and the secondary data. For the primary data, we have the data collection process like interview. These are the primary data. Questionnaire, test, and observation. And then under secondary data, we have the paper base and the electronic base. Okay, for the secondary data. With that, thank you very much for listening and good day.